Okay, so we've hit 6 o'clock. I might just jump straight into things just so that we can use our whole hour tonight. So my name's Samantha McCann and I'm a project manager at the Foundation for National Parks and Wildlife. It's great to see so many of you already in the webinar, ready to hear all about freshwater turtles. So I just wanted to begin tonight by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which each of us are located tonight. For me, that is Dharawal country, and pay my respects to their elders, past and present. I extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people here tonight. So I just wanted to also start with some housekeeping. So tonight you are on Zoom, but you're also on the webinar platform. So that means that you don't have the option to turn on or off your microphones and videos. That's already done for you. So if you're just panicking and looking for where to turn your video off, don't worry, it's already done for you. But everybody can communicate in two ways tonight. So at the bottom of your screen, you should be able to see a chat option. You're welcome to use the chat box for speaking with each other, for sharing any turtle information that you'd like to share. But if you do have a question tonight for one of our speakers, you can actually pop that in the Q&A box. So next to the chat box is a button that says Q&A. So I'm going to be monitoring the Q&A box throughout the talk, and we'll leave around 10 minutes at the end for answering all of your turtle questions. So if you do have a turtle question, please don't put it in the chat, put it in the Q&A box, and hopefully we'll be able to ask the speakers about that tonight. So as I mentioned, I'm from the Foundation for National Parks and Wildlife, and we're very happy to be supporting the 1 Million Turtles Community Conservation Program, which we're going to hear lots about tonight. So I'll just introduce our speakers. We're lucky to have two exciting speakers tonight. So first of all, we have Ricky Spencer. Ricky is an Associate Professor of Ecology at Western Sydney University. He's been working on freshwater turtle conservation and ecology since 1996, and Ricky created the TurtleSAT app in 2014, and I'm sure we're going to be hearing a bit about that app tonight. And this has now morphed into the 1 Million Turtles Community Conservation Program this year. Our second speaker is Nathan Cutter. So Nathan works in the Invasive Species Biosecurity Unit of the New South Wales Department of Primary Industries. He is concerned with the management of existing non-native invasive animal populations and preventing the introduction and establishment of new non-native animal species in Australia. He's currently based in Orange, but coordinates the work of people located across the state to ensure that new pest animal incursions are managed to prevent negative biosecurity impacts to our environment, economy, and the community. So I'm very excited to be able to have both of these speakers here tonight. And we're just going to get straight into things, learning all about turtles, and Ricky Spencer, I believe, is going to kick us off. Over to you, Ricky.
Cool, thank you, Sam, and thank you for everyone coming to join us tonight. I know it's before Christmas, but I love any chance to talk turtles, so I'll talk turtles way more than the hour if I have to, but thank you for coming. And we do want to talk about, I guess, things that you can actually do during your Christmas break. I think many of us are going off to the bush or going down the beach, going camping, those sort of things. We want to make you turtle aware, and I think that's the key message we want to get out today, is to become turtle aware on your break, because they're everywhere. They are out everywhere, but they are declining, and we are seeing massive issues with lots of them declining to the point of extinction from a whole range of reasons. So we need you to find turtles, become turtle aware. So I'm going to share my screen now and we'll get started. How's that, Sam? That come through okay?
Yeah, looks great.
Okay. So I'm from Western Sydney University. I have been working on turtles for a long time now, and I guess really working in wetlands and river systems more generally. But you know, I guess everything, you know, the turtles are the most important species in the wetlands, and everyone will tell you that. And if they tell you different, they're wrong, okay? So what we are going to talk tonight about is, I guess, break through a few myths and questions that you've got to ask, but also talk about the 1 Million Turtles program, which is, I guess going beyond citizen science, making communities conservation managers and implement, community conservation. That's where we really want to get to, where people and people power can actually, save our turtles and improve our wetlands as well. Okay, so I'm going to go through the first question that I always get asked. What's the difference between a turtle and a tortoise? Reality is not much. You can call them either. But I guess in terms of, worldwide, we generally talk about our turtles as actually being aquatic. So it doesn't matter whether they come from freshwater, doesn't matter whether they're your marine turtles that we all know and love. But basically the tortoises are like up the top left here, those with the big stumps, the big Galapagos tortoises. That's essentially the difference between them, but it really doesn't matter what you call them. Australia, though, I guess we don't have these big Galapagos tortoises. One of the things, I guess, probably our closest ecological tortoise-like thing are probably many of our desert lizards and that eat a lot of vegetation, plants like the shinglebacks, those kind of things. But our tortoises, we did have them, but they actually died out a long, long time ago. So our freshwater turtles have actually been called tortoises, and that's fine to call them. As long as you're calling them something, it means they're there. So turtles, tortoises, doesn't really matter. But just from a worldwide perspective, when we do, talk in the media or write scientific publications, we'll refer to them as turtles. But if you want to still call them tortoises, it's equally as correct as well. So that just gets that question out of the way. I do want to go on to a little bit of turtle biology or tortoise biology. We have two major groups of turtles in the world. Essentially what we've got is what in Australia are our side-neck turtles, or the Pleurodira. The ones you see in the cartoons where they close up shop and pull all their heads in and their legs in are actually the Cryptodira. And so most of those are in North America, or most of the rest of the world. But particularly in the Southern Hemisphere, we have, I guess, what we call the side-neck turtles, or the Pleurodires. There are about 15 families, 75 genera, 331 species. That changes all the time with genetics and that sort of thing. And even this 134 species globally threatened, it's way more now. The last that came out fairly recently is around 60% either have some listing in terms of conservation. So we're losing our turtles, we're losing our tortoises all around the world for different reasons, though. So I guess one of the things you'll see is, particularly in Asia, poaching, human intervention, poaching for food, but also for the pet trade, has seen almost total extinction of most freshwater turtles. In Australia, it's a bit different, and we'll go through that. I've already said this. Here we go. So this is these are our broad-shell turtles down here. So it's one of the largest ones that you'll see. But like I said, they're Pleurodires. They pull their necks in. So they pull them into the side, which works generally, but against an invasive predator like a fox, which actually has a muzzle that can get in there and pull that head out, it doesn't work that well. So probably for most of our native predators in the past and current, this method of pulling the necks in works really well, but foxes are very cunning, as we know, and they're able to work it out, which is putting our turtles at further risk. So just a little bit again of anatomy. So the top of a turtle is called the carapace. The bottom is called a plastron. And essentially what this is keratinized and bone of the ribs being fused together. So like our ribs to our backbone, it's the same thing, but basically what keratin is, it's pretty much the same material as what our fingernails are, but it's just layer upon layer of it that's surrounding the ribs. And so essentially what we have is a carapace on top, a plastron at the bottom, and this is the bridge that's in between. It's really, really, really tough, really, really gives great protection, but as you'll see, it's not enough protection to stop it from a turtle being killed by being run over as well. So, so a whole range of things from invasive predators to us have really impacted, you know, I guess a model organism that was built for protection, but you know, it's not quite enough because of us largely. I want to highlight this thing at the front, so which is called the hyoid apparatus. See up near the head up here. This is really cool. So the turtles don't have teeth, so they don't actually rip. They don't actually rip using teeth. What they actually do to capture their prey is actually draw this hyoid apparatus back. So it's almost like a plunge, like a syringe. As you pull the syringe plunge back, and it just sucks in whatever's there. If there's a fish or something like that, it basically sucks in the water plus the fish that's in there. Then they use their bony plates, like which you can see in here, to actually crush whatever they're eating at that point. So no teeth, just big bony plates. This is a beak, which you know can do a bit of ripping up here. It's called the beak, like a bird's beak, but to a large extent, that hyoid apparatus draws in anything that swims past or it's trying to catch, and just like a big plunger, just sucks in everything there, and then they eat their prey that way. So a little bit about reproduction. This is where we need a little bit of biology to know what we're seeing when we're looking for turtles. So all species lay eggs, and all species lay eggs on land, except for one up in the Northern Territory. They'll actually, it's really interesting, they'll lay eggs under the water, but only at a time when the water is actually drawing down. So, you know, beginning of the dry season. And those eggs won't develop until they start drying out and go from there. But all turtles will come onto land and actually dig a hole and lay their eggs that way. How often? Some will have 2 clutches, some might have 3 clutches, all will have probably 1 clutch per year, pretty much. And some of them will have usually between sort of 10 and 30 eggs, depending on the species. So they leave the water to nest. You can see a turtle here that's nesting. They construct their nest with the hind limbs. So if you ever get a chance to see a turtle just nesting, stay about 10, 15 meters away, sit down and watch it. They use their hind legs pretty much like our hands to actually take out soil. And then they lay the eggs, cover them with soil, and then they lift themselves up and they just go bang, bang, bang to cover the nest. And it's not about packing it full of soil again, because they actually want those eggs to breathe. So they just put a bit of soil on top and then just bang, 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 tap it down. And this is pretty much what the nest looks like after. So you essentially have a plug at the top, and then you've got a chamber full of eggs. And this air is really, really important. Like we breathe, eggs breathe too. So they've got little holes that we can't see, but under a microscope, you can see them, where carbon dioxide goes out, oxygen comes in. So it's a bit like us in terms of breathing, carbon dioxide out, oxygen in. The eggs are doing the same thing. So if this is full of water, or if this is full of soil, they can asphyxiate and die. And so it's really important how the female constructs this, and in the right material, that she can basically create a nest like this. Okay, so in Australia, we have 30 species of turtle. And I think I'm not going to talk about all of them, of course. I'm not really probably going to concentrate on too many in particular, but in Southern Australia, particularly, pretty much from Sydney down and across the divide, we really only have 3 species of freshwater turtle, particularly in that Murray-Darling system. We have the common longneck, which everyone probably has seen, or or rehabilitated or being involved in rescuing in some capacity. We have what we call the short-necked turtle or Murray River turtle. We also have the broad-shell turtle too, which is, I vote for the coolest turtle in Australia. This is one here. They got the longest neck, about 50 centimetres, their neck, and you can see their head's quite flattened. So when they come through, you know, maybe some thick scrub, their head right down, they really do have what we call a snake neck turtle, and people do confuse them. But they're gentle giants. They can be about 50 centimetres long, 50 centimetres plus the, and then plus their neck. So they can be quite startling when people see them come out to nest. Okay, so I always get asked what do turtles do and why are they important? Ecologically, they are an important part of the ecosystem. We always call them the vacuums of the river. And we went about over the last couple of years to actually, all right, let's quantify this.
I'm just going to do a presentation.
Yeah, let's quantify this and actually work out how important they are in this scavenging role. And I'll just show you a quick video. Hopefully this will work. So if you've ever kept turtles, and particularly in summer when it's warm, you'll know how hungry they get, and they're always asking for food. And this is what they do in the river too. So you can see there with turtles, it became a skeleton in less than a week, you know, the dead fish. But without it, it basically took a month or two. This is just the initial week, but a month or two to break down. But you can imagine it exploding, stinky, and, you know, algae everywhere. This is what turtles do. They're the cleaners of the river system, but we are losing them. They're also important culturally. They are totems for many species, but also, like I said, overseas, they're obviously important for pet trade, you know, those kind of things as well. But it is leading to their extinction in many parts of the world because of that demand in the pet trade. But we are losing them. And so there's a few papers that have come out, and this is really over the last 40 years. From this one, the prospects of many turtle populations in the Murray Valley look bleak without management intervention. And then recently, with lots of follow-up work with, you know, the possible extinction of a long-lived ancient species that survived several million years might be a significant warning sign of the current state of our freshwater environments. And we think back to the Menindee Lakes, the fish kill that occurred. That's where we've been seeing the greatest decline of freshwater turtles, particularly in those lower Murray-Darling systems. Those fish kill, part of the cleanup process would be freshwater turtles, but they're not there. They're actually not there anymore in some of these areas. So that's where that, you know, their importance and actually seeing the consequences of I guess, management as well, but also in that cleanup and water quality, we've lost one of our greatest resources, or losing one of our greatest resources. The reasons are multiple reasons. I guess roadkill is certainly a big one. Foxes destroy about 95% of nests. But we're also seeing disease and a whole range of other factors that are influencing. It's almost a death by 1,000 cuts, but we are seeing it directly. We are seeing turtles being killed on roads. Probably, we're just having our turtle seasons now in terms of nesting, and we're seeing a huge amount of that still occurring. But foxes, I guess, particularly in southern Australia to central Australia, are limiting recruitment to such an extent that we're basically seeing an ultimate ageing population. So foxes, carp influence water quality, water management, obviously, we talked about Menindee lakes and lack of water are certainly a big issue as well. Motor vehicles, and the extent of this really has just shocked us over the last couple of years since TurtleSAT has been there. But also fishing. Fishing was one of the major factors, particularly around, in the last 100 or about 50 to 100 years ago, that there was down on the Murray River, there was an actual, I guess, a hunt for turtles to actually, because they, were impacting the fishing industries, and, probably tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of turtles were killed because of that. But we're trying to piece together some of that historical data on that to see, well, where was the starting point for our freshwater turtles? But that occurred, almost a bounty on them at some stage, late 1800s to early 1900s. Salinity, this here, if you see this photo over here, this here is a freshwater turtle. You can see it's a Murray shortneck. And this is a marine tube worm. It's become so salty that saltwater pests are actually, and tens of thousands of turtles died in the millennium drought to 2011 because of diseases like this. But I guess a classic example of what we're seeing is of disease was the Bellinger River snapping turtle, which you may have heard about. This almost sent this species to extinction within 3 weeks up on the Bellinger River near Coffs Harbour. A disease, we don't know, we know the disease, but we don't know why, but basically wiped out almost all adult turtles from this population within 3 weeks. And that's how quickly it was spreading. And I'm just going to quickly show you the importance, I guess, really of motor vehicles. And so from TurtleSAT data and from really citizen science data, we've really seen how extensive it actually is. And we've just put out a video, and which I'll quickly play for you now.
During Turtle Month, citizen scientists rescued hundreds of turtles throughout the country. We do it because it's a pretty awful death, and we have empathy towards that individual turtle, but that action is potentially the single most profound conservation action for any species. What we mean by profound conservation action is the impact that moving a turtle off the road or taking it to a vet massively lowers the risk of extinction. That action has more impact on the risk of extinction or lowering the risk of extinction than any other conservation action, such as breeding programs potentially for pandas or saving a tree for a koala. We aren't saying that those actions aren't important. We need to manage species differently. And managing populations involves multiple tools in what we call an integrated management plan. Okay, so let's visualise why saving adult turtles, and particularly adult female turtles, is so important. We often see turtles near roads. What they're doing is coming from a wetland or a farm dam that's nearby and right next to the road. So for this example, we're going to assume that we have 100 turtles in a population. So a farm dam could easily have 100, probably several hundred turtles. Over 100 years, it remains pretty stable. And what we assume in these population models is that adult survival is pretty high, nest predation levels are also very high, and adult females can produce, on average, around about 15 eggs per year. But if one turtle comes out to nest each year and gets hit on the road, the implications for this population are disastrous. Just one turtle per year. Extinction within 50 years. That's essentially the consequences of one turtle being hit every year in this population. Turtle Month and TurtleSAT particularly has demonstrated how extensive road deaths actually are. So hundreds of turtles are being killed on the road, and TurtleSAT's shown us that. But it's actually shown that during Turtle Month at least, hundreds have actually been saved by you. The TurtleSATers, the citizen science, the volunteers, the public. Look at this great resource by the New South Wales Government, which actually documents the number of turtles, amongst other species, rescued by wildlife rescue groups over the last 5 years. What we can see is that around 5,000 turtles in New South Wales have actually been rescued, and more than half of them have actually been released back into the wild. So we know adult turtles are vital for reducing population extinction risks. But why does it actually come down to those adult females of population resilience? Let's come back to our population of 100 turtles. So if a new predator moved in and destroyed an extra nest, one extra nest per year, the decline does occur, but the risk of extinction is actually negligible. So remember, a nest is actually 15 hatchling turtles. So there are 15 turtles in what we call a nest. It actually takes the destruction of 5 extra nests or more than 70 hatchlings per year to lead to similar declines to the loss of one adult turtle that we saw in our original scenario. So this is why saving one adult turtle is so important. You need to release 70 extra hatchlings per year to replace that one adult female. Next time you stop to pick up a turtle off the road, you aren't only helping her, you are significantly reducing extinction risk and helping the population to not go extinct. There is lots we can do, from picking up that turtle to putting up signs in known hotspots to redesigning new roads at the planning stage. 1 million turtles is helping communities lead these conservation efforts. We'll be back soon with another episode.
Okay, I'll leave it there at the moment. You can see the threats. You can see the major threats that are actually occurring, but there are emerging ones. And I'm going to hand it over to Nathan here to talk about the red-eared sliders and potential impacts of red-eared sliders on our populations. This here came in from TurtleSAT recently. This is an eastern longneck in Sydney. Actually out basking with a red-eared slider. So I'll hand it over to you, Nathan. You can talk about the emerging threat.
You just unmute, Nathan. Nathan, you're just on mute. Are you able to unmute?
He might just be seeing the full screen, just in that full screen mode, so he might be able to get back. Are you able to unmute from there, Sam?
There we go.
There we go. We got you.
Thanks,
Right.
Nathan.
Sorry about that. Yeah, my name's Nathan Cutter, and it's a real pleasure to be invited along to talk to you. So my presentation covers the species that Ricky mentioned there, the red-eared slider turtle that was basking with the eastern longneck. And so I'm going to talk about the development of a plan of action for the invasive red-eared slider turtle, or I'll call it REST for short, because the species is now identified internationally as an invasive species of concern. And although it's not native to Australia, it has unfortunately established in parts of the Sydney Basin. So this work involved conducting a series of trials to determine methods of detecting and removing rest from the New South Wales environment. And results from these trials will be outlined in a management plan for rest to provide impacted land managers and communities with effective management options. The International Union for the Conservation of Nature has nominated rest as one of the world's 100 worst invasive species. Rest is also included on DOR's national priority list of exotic environmental pests, weeds and diseases. They're classed as an extreme threat by the Environment and Invasives Committee in Australia. In New South Wales, they're classed as a prohibited dealing, and it's illegal to keep slider turtles in anywhere other than a research facility or a licensed zoo in New South Wales. But despite this, they've been found in almost all Australian states and territories, either in the open environment or captive. And unfortunately, we have breeding populations of rest within the Sydney Basin. They're actually native to Midwestern states of the USA and northeastern Mexico. However, the species has spread across the world through the pet trade and subsequent releases from captivity. Rest can breed rapidly with up to 23 eggs per clutch and up to 5 clutches per year. We've seen them breeding in New South Wales right through to late autumn. Eggs are being produced. They have a long lifespan, up to 75 years in captivity, and they outcompete with our native species for nesting and basking sites because they have quite aggressive behaviour, and this can extend to competition for food in certain situations. As well as that, they can carry harmful pathogens. And this is particularly the case if they've been recently imported into the country and they've been kept with other captive non-native animals. So in summary, the rest management trial work that we've conducted falls into 6 general areas. That's raising public awareness of the species, the slider turtle species, and promoting reporting channels, improving methods for detecting rest, evaluating and improving trapping tools, including use of firearms, vet lab analysis findings, and compliance programs. So in order to inform and engage and build support within the community for this work, we've used a range of promotional initiatives like Ricky's program with TurtleSAT. We've used signage, brochures and posters distributed to key areas where rest have been detected. We've used social and traditional media, educational tools like 3D printed models and virtual 3D images. We attend events like Herb Society trade shows and field days. We put newsletter style emails out and provide information to interested members of the community. We have a range of reporting channels that are made available to report, such as a phone line, electronic report form, and a dedicated feral scan module, as well as authorised DPI officers and police and so forth who work under the New South Wales Biosecurity Act to enforce appropriate management. So as a result of all of this publicity and work, we get a lot of reports of slider turtles throughout the year. Unfortunately, just today, you saw the map earlier, but just today we received an unconfirmed report of slider turtles at Bellambi, which is a northern suburb of Wollongong. And if it's confirmed as rest, it'll be the southernmost detection of slider turtles in the New South Wales environment that we've received. But since 2017, when the Biosecurity Act came into place, we've received over 150 reports of slider turtles, and each of those reports may pertain to one or more slider turtles. In one compliance investigation, we had 90 slider turtles seized from one residential property where they were being intentionally bred. And of the confirmed reports, just about a half of the cases have been successfully resolved. You can see this in this chart here. As we've progressed, we've had increased numbers of reports and increased numbers of cases resolved, which is great. But despite the number of rest detections and reports that we receive, they can be difficult to detect in the open environment, particularly when they're in low densities. As per their name, they tend to slide into the water when they're disturbed. So one of the tools we used was to use trained scent detector dogs. And we found that after training them on water samples containing rest and rest eggs, we were able to get the dogs to detect slider turtles in the open environment. They were able to detect rest eggs and determine those apart from native turtle eggs, sorry. They were able to find rest odor in water samples. So if slider turtles were in the water, they were able to indicate that, that the water had been used by slider turtles. And they were clearly able to distinguish slider turtles from native turtle species. I'll just try and run this video now. It shows one of the scent detector dogs working one of the sites. You can see the dog is actually trained to indicate at the scent. It doesn't indicate when on a visual site. It's actually looking around this little amphitheater area for the scent of the turtle. So we've released a slider turtle into the environment. That's where I released it there at the tree. And so it's found that scent, and now it's trying to find where the turtle went to. And when it finds the turtle, it actually indicates by putting its nose on the target. And it doesn't actually physically impact the turtle at all. It just indicates. You'll see it's just about to find it. I didn't even know where it was. It surprised me how fast it moved. So there, it's found it just there. I think it surprised us all how fast and how far that turtle moved. Also, we've tried eDNA detection of slider turtles. So with the University of Canberra, we've used environmental DNA samples in water, and we've used an automated eDNA water sampler to collect and filter samples on site. One of the restrictive parts of using eDNA is having to transport large amounts of water, but this system actually filters on site. So it used a quantitative PCR test, similar to what they're using for COVID detection at the moment with the PCR tests. And what we found was that eDNA in water samples can be detected. So, but not in not in the open environment so much. So we're restricted at the moment to about one turtle in around about 5,000 litres in a controlled environment. Although we did have success with determining slider turtles in open waters, it really didn't give us a strong signal. So in fact, the scent detector dogs gave a higher sensitivity than the eDNA. So then what we tried to do was use DNA swabs on pontoons. Non-natural sites where turtles were basking, and we were able to swab those sites with a DNA swab, again similar to the COVID swabs, and then run the tests with the PCR tests, and that was able to combat issues with low density of slider turtles, seasonal effects where the turtles go into brumation and so forth, which reduced the sensitivity of the tests in the water samples. We also trialled a number of methods of capturing slider turtles. This chart ranks the level of effectiveness we experience with a range of tools and techniques. So in our trials, electrofishing was trialled, but it was found to be ineffective. Although the electric field does stimulate turtle muscle, the turtles remain submerged and unable to be found, particularly in turbid water. Pike and seine nets, which are which are depicted there, were also trialled, but they were difficult to use in silty waterways again, and we weren't able to catch any slider turtles with those types of traps. Baited crab pots and cathedral traps provided positive results, but they aren't species specific, and they need to be checked regularly to ensure that your welfare of trapped animals is maintained, because they have the potential to drown turtles if they're not looked at frequently. Interestingly, we found that slider turtles are able to be conditioned to and respond to pre-feeding prior to trapping. So if you have the time and you know you've got slider turtles in the environment, you can actually pre-feed them. In this case, we were using a koi pellet. And you can see the turtle was actually able to be brought in almost like following breadcrumbs, and was able to be picked up with a landing net. And we were able to repeatedly do that with successive turtles, not the same trained turtle, but a range of turtles that had been trained over months to come into that feeding. Basking traps are really the key to our success, we've found. That gives the opportunity for the turtle to get out of the water and get onto those basking type barriers there and get out of the water and bask. So we had most of our trapping success with basking traps. We also compared the effectiveness of removing water from a dam, and then collectively keeping the turtles using enclosure fencing. But you can see that our key tool has been public engagement. That's been the most effective method of removing slider turtles from the environment. That is, engaging with the public and having them report, and then working with the public to remove those turtles.
Sorry, Nathan.
Yes.
We're just having a slight issue with the presentation. It's just not, there's a bit of a blank square right in the middle of it. And so we're just missing out on some of the pictures. I was just...
Okay, I can see what that is. That is a slider turtle pole. Is that it?
It's gone now. Yes.
Okay.
Great.
Am I still going okay for time?
Yeah, maybe another 5 minutes or so.
Yeah, okay. So
thanks for that.
So we used a range of different firearms and found that successful, but really not appropriate for densely built up environments. We basically trialled a range of firearms on already euthanized animals. So we had a vet on site to determine how effective the firearms were for that use, but we really can't find an application in most of these urban sites for use of firearms. All of the slider turtles that we captured have been humanely euthanized by qualified veterinarians, after which they're sent to our veterinary diagnostics lab in DPI, and we take a lot of demographics. So we look at their gut contents to determine what they've been eating, disease that they might have been exposed to and carrying. And we also take tissue samples, which are stored at the Australian Museum, which is undertaking a study on familial relatedness of slider turtles in Australia. We also determined that they have carried a number of diseases which can impact on both human health and native species, including Salmonella, Klebsiella, Oxytosa, and Enterococcus faecalis. So some quite serious diseases that they can carry. We do run a compliance program, which has been quite successful. And recently we prosecuted a person for keeping and breeding slider turtles. And so they received a $7,500 fine and a criminal record for that. I'd just like to say thank you to a range of people. That this research was funded by New South Wales government and rural ratepayers, and was contributed to by a range of people. And my last slide, I think that's my last slide there, we just ask that if you see anything unusual in the environment, like an unusual animal that you might think is exotic or are sure it's exotic, and it's an unusual animal, you can report that through to DPI via telephone, through a web report, or via email. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Nathan. Ricky, did you want to say anything else before we go to questions?
Yeah, I'll just quickly share my screen again.
Yeah.
Hold on a sec. Optimize. Okay, so I'll jump back.
We just have a couple of minutes.
No worries. I'll quickly jump back and just talk about how you guys can get involved, and we need your help. Obviously, reporting sliders, but TurtleSAT's been around. Hopefully, most of you know about it, at least to some degree. It's to record any turtles and to actually record the other things, such their impacts, where they've been hit on roads, but also dug up nests. Pretty much anything that anything with a hole and eggshells that are on the ground are going to be turtle nests. So really, really important to report that kind of thing. We've really upgraded it too, and you can see we're nearly 12,000 records now. Probably may have gone past that. We're actually starting to record your impacts and how many nests have been protected. We're about to start, and I'll talk a bit later. I'll get to it now with the 1 Million Turtles program about nest protection protocols. That's part of community conservation. But how many turtles are picked up off the road and relocated? Because it's as you saw, it's really, really important to do. We're also getting some reports of sliders. So during Turtle Month we had a few, and yes, and if you do report it through TurtleSAT. The good thing about TurtleSAT, it is through on the Feral Scan network, the same network that is used by Nathan. I'm looking at the photos and I can report it straight away. But there are, as Nathan said, there are specific protocols, specific ways of reporting that as well. But if you're not sure and you report it through TurtleSAT, we'll confirm it and we'll be able to forward it on for you as well. I do want to quickly show you the impact of TurtleSAT here. One, we have, obviously the extent of road mortality, but up in the top left here, you can see they're all dug up nests, the gold with the P on there. But it's also showing that turtles are being intercepted by foxes and killed as well. So it's not just about reporting where you see turtles. It is about that, but it's actually, quantifying, helping us quantify the impacts as well. We're now at the stage where TurtleSAT's growing up. We don't just want citizen scientists, we want community conservationists. We want to train you to that. We've got it now, Citizen Science Training Hub up at the Australian Reptile Park, but also online. You can do it at 1millionturtles.com. And obviously there's many of you here are wildlife carers and rescuers, and actually you are community conservationists. You can see it's not just about that individual turtle that you are rescuing. You're having massive impacts on turtle populations, positive impacts as well. And we've teamed with Wires to actually, develop modules and as well, and trying to, sort of harness that that good stuff that you're actually doing as well. So this is all coming into the future over the next 3 years. We really want to get this going and training community conservationists. There'll be things that you can be involved in, things like the National Nest Predation Survey. You find it all on 1millionturtles.com. We can go into it more later. We'll probably have more workshops about these individual things that I'll be starting. And this is the really cool one. Well, this is my daughter here with a turtle here, but we're going to start a Turtles in a Schools program. And not just, it's not just for, hey, here's a pet turtle. They're actually going to get trained. They're actually will develop, they'll get the students, the kids and the students and the staff and the teachers will actually get training and actually, you know, in terms of husbandry, but also integrate with that, with the work in the field. So become ecologists, conservationists, and turtle experts as well. And they'll get accreditation from TAFE as well as Western Sydney University here as a digital certificate, start their CVs off and head down that path as well. So, but other things, we've got Turtle Islands. Again, I could probably have a whole talk about the Turtle Island in areas where we can't do, you know, lots of nest protection or fox control, those kind of things. This is an island that we launched in a few years ago in the Blue Mountains, where turtles are nesting on this island, but they're also basking on it. And these islands might actually be really good ways to find spider turtles as well, because they love to bask. So any structure, they'll be out there basking. But we're also starting things like nest protection. This will be a really easy but important thing for community conservation as well. Last thing that we're doing, working with Transport for New South Wales, and this is right at the infancy, using artificial technology. You can see here dead turtles on the road, and they're automatically being picked up by dash cam. So hopefully this can be, you know, we can do this in real time. A turtle about to cross the road can, you know, send an alert that, you know, potentially to a wildlife carer or you know, ground yeah, the ground patrol or whatever for the road patrol and that sort of thing, that we can start picking that up as well, but automatically record where the hotspots are as well. So we want you to join us, 1millionturtles.com. That's where you'll start seeing things. We have lots of community programs like this, and talks and workshops and that kind of thing. So please join us at that. And again, these are I guess all the people that are involved so far are community groups. There's a huge amount more community groups that I haven't listed here. They're probably the more important ones as well. So I'll stop sharing and we'll go from there.
Thanks so much, Ricky. So we have had a few questions throughout the webinar as well. I've noticed that Ricky's actually been answering them in the Q&A box, which is great. So I might start with the questions that you haven't answered yet, just in case we run out of time. So we do have a question here that says, what if you move a turtle off to the side of the road, but it's not a safe place to put it? For example, on train lines or where houses are, etc. What is the furthest you should move a freshwater turtle?
Yeah, that is, I mean, we always say, pick up a turtle and move it to the safest place in the direction that it was heading. I would, but there's always going to be exceptions. There's always going to be, I'm not really sure. The reason why we say, you know, don't pick it up and take it too far is, one, it will probably get out and go again because it wants to go where it's going to. And the other thing is that we've actually found some issues, major issues of turtles, particularly on the East Coast catchment. The East Coast catchments between, say, here and Brisbane, all have unique set of turtle species, and they're all different in each catchment, each river system that you go. So, but what we've found is actually some of the, you know, even though they're native species, they've been introduced to, you know, probably being picked up on the Pacific Highway, and that I'll just take that home and let that go in my back dam or back of the river, but it's actually been taken from one catchment to another. And we've found these native species, particularly the short necks, are actually hybridizing with some of the, you know, the species that only occur in that river, like Manning River turtle or the Bellinger turtle, and potentially a threatening process to them. So long story short is that don't take them too far. If you're not sure, if you're in a city or something like that, then potentially taking them to the local golf course, which has a dam. They're probably only going to be long necks to a large extent. That's probably not a bad idea. But keeping in the same catchment is probably the most important thing. But I'd also just quickly say that if you can't release them straight across the road in a safe spot, just look where they're heading and maybe find the nearest water source to, you know, on your navigator or something like that on your phone, and maybe release them there.
Thanks for that, Ricky. We had a question for Nathan, which is what happens to the red-eared sliders once they're trapped? Are they killed?
Yeah, so, well, we work across, the Department of Primary Industries works across a range, a spectrum of these non-native animals that have been brought into the country, and for whatever reason they might have been trafficked into the country for trade. There's a lot of biosecurity issues with those. What we try and do is determine where there's a conservation concern for a species. So we look at the CITES listing, the appendix listing, which a lot of people would be familiar with. So there's a range of appendices to the CITES, and it's the international conservation status for that species. So if it's a threatened species that's come into the country and it may be illegally imported or what have you, we try and rehome that animal to a licensed zoo or a research facility that can manage that continued conservation. But a species like the red-eared slider turtle, which has been bred up in the millions, and you might have seen some photographs of the breeding farms in the southern United States, so they're bred up as a commodity essentially. They're not a conservation concern, and red-eared slider turtles are now established on every continent in the world other than the Antarctica. So we just can't have that. The zoos don't want red-eared slider turtles because they're not a conservation concern. They are an invasive species, and what we do to manage them is we have a network of qualified vets so we reduce the welfare issues by transporting them to the closest vet where they're vet checked and they're humanely euthanized. And then from there, they're sent to our state veterinary diagnostic lab for screening, like I mentioned in my talk, and try and understand a little bit more about that species. And then tissue samples are taken from each of the animals and stored at the Australian Museum so that we can get a better understanding of the types of genetics of these animals. And one day we might be able to manage them a little bit better, like understanding from whether they were a recent import or whether they've been bred locally, and that way regulate a little bit better, be able to target who might be breeding and releasing these animals.
Thanks for that, Nathan. Yeah, that was an interesting answer. I had a question for you, Ricky. Is TurtleSAT New South Wales only?
No, TurtleSAT's Australia-wide, so you can download the app, or you can go to turtlesat.org.au and you can see all the recordings. And so no, absolutely not. I reckon that question might be for Nathan though, the New South Wales only, in terms of reporting of red-eared sliders. So if you're in other states, Nathan, how do you report them? Just quickly say, if you do put them on TurtleSAT, it'll go straight to the states, but there are specific protocols. But do you know of in other states of how to report them, Nathan?
Yeah. Yes, I work for New South Wales DPI, but it's a nationally consistent picture with exotic reptiles. In no jurisdiction in Australia can you keep private collections of exotic reptiles. And so the feral scan module that I mentioned, so feral scan, if you look up feral scan on the web, you'll see a module for red-eared slider turtles, and you can report it throughout Australia. And all jurisdictions are concerned with red-eared slider turtles in their particular area, and there's specific rules and regulations and enforcement officers to manage those things. But like I said, it's a national exotic pest recognised throughout Australia, and each jurisdiction will so Peter West in Feral Scan would be able to forward those reports of slider turtles on to the correct authority in each jurisdiction.
So just letting you know that TurtleSAT is built on the Feral Scan network when we initially started that. So what we're going to do early next year with in discussions with the Invasive Species Council, who I guess run feral scan with DPI, we'll actually have a point to record that, and it will go straight. That recording will not only just go to TurtleSAT, but be directly fed into the feral scan network, so to alert people as well. But it's just a little bit down the track, but because we're built on the same network, it's going to be something easy that we can do anyway.
Just quickly, while we're on red-eared sliders as well, somebody did answer the question in the poll about seeing red-eared sliders outside of the map that Nathan showed in his presentation. Somebody said that they had seen one outside that map. So if they haven't reported that, could you please email me at Wildlife Heroes? You should have the email from the event invitation. Just if you haven't reported that, it'd be really good to be able to pass that information through to Nathan.
Or they could put it straight on the feral scan now, because you can retrospectively
oh, there we go.
Put it in with the date, time, or whatever. If you're not, even if you don't know exact date or time, you can still just put that in, and it will go straight to Nathan anyway.
Great. So if that person's still listening, that would be great.
Really appreciate that. Like I said, the results of our work show that citizen surveys and the participation of the community is where we're really winning, really kicking goals with managing this species.
Yeah, awesome. We have a few more questions. We're out of time. So we might wrap up, but what I'll do is I'll save all of the questions. So I'm going to be sending out an email to everybody that registered in the next week or so. This webinar was recorded, so I'll be uploading that recording onto our website, and I'll send that link through in the email. But what I can also do is send through the answers to these questions for everyone, just so everyone has the information, and that way we'll be able to cover everything that we didn't get time to talk about as well. So yeah, we might need to wrap up. I'm sure everyone wants to go have some dinner. But thank you so much to Ricky and Nathan for joining us tonight. Seeing from the chat that everyone's very appreciative that you took the time to talk to us tonight. I know I learned a lot, so I'm sure everybody did as well. So yes, I will be sending out an email. I'll send more information about Nathan's work. I'll send more information about Ricky's work. So I'm sure you'll be able to read a bit more about what they're both up to. If you want any other information, feel free to email me. And yes, our website is fnpw.org.au, and we have a whole page up on there about the 1 Million Turtles program with links to TurtleSAT and links to other information. So I'll send that through as well. But thank you to everybody for coming. I hope you really enjoyed the talk. We are hoping to have more turtle talks as well next year. So keep an eye out, and hopefully we'll see you at those too. And thank you so much. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Ricky. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.